If you keep giving people the same sort of interaction and the same activity over and over again, you're going to kill the energy level of your workshop, and people are not going to take away from it as much as they could. You don't want people to disengage.
Which is not to say that you have to learn maybe a whole bunch more than what you know.
Instead of having people introduce themselves, have them. Once you're at this stage, once you have an idea what your attendance is going to be, this is when I think it's really good time to actually start kind of planning your lesson. I would really, if you've never taught before, I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend kind of making a general script. It may even be helpful to script like how you're going to greet people, what are you going to say the first 5 minutes. Um, it's like a script, for instance, like your greeting. And if you've done this before, if you taught before, if you've led workshops and things like that before, I think scripting may not be as necessary. But you want to script your greeting. You want to get a general idea of your explanations for concepts. Now, it's a class. Classes are organic. Things are going to happen you can't prepare for. That's going to happen. Okay, but you want to try to prepare for as many things as you can. How are you going to explain the things? Okay, that's why we want to talk about a topic that you're interested in and that you know some things about. Matthias does short film. He knows about 3 acts. He knows about act creation and things like that. So that's why our kind of mock class we're making right now is geared around poetry and short film. You need to pick a topic that you have some knowledge of. You don't have to be an expert necessarily, but you need to have some general knowledge that you're going to be teaching people about.
Yeah,
It may be helpful to write them about. Yeah.
Yeah, now I was also going to say, but while you don't have to be an expert at it, you typically want to be teaching like no more than a tenth of what you know. So I mean, which is to say that, so like the things that I know about making short film and things like that, like I have, like, the thing that I would be teaching in a workshop, I have at least enough knowledge that if I really needed to go in depth, or if I really need to understand more, then there's another wealth of knowledge that I can dip into that I kind of understand. And I think the thing that the reason that I would say that helps is because it's actually a lot like teachers in a classroom, right? Like if you're a third grade teacher teaching third grade math, you know a lot more than third grade math, right? And so I think the confidence level and the fluent the fluidity that you can speak and kind of talk about a topic, because again, when you're especially when you're in front of people, when you're in front of like adults, people that are like learning from you, I think a lot of times you can tell when somebody kind of understands their subject matter. It's Which is not to say that you have to learn maybe a whole bunch more than what you know. It's just to say that, like, don't teach to the extent of your knowledge, right? So like don't try to, if you just learned something last week but you haven't quite figured it out yet, you haven't quite you haven't quite put all the pieces together yet, then maybe don't try to teach that. Maybe try to teach the most simple kind of basic version of what you know, and in that way, as you're growing, as you're learning, then you can also kind of start adding pieces onto what you're able to teach. Because I don't think, even if you know something somewhat, I don't think that means that you can teach it. You probably have to know something a lot more in depth than your simple surface knowledge in order to be able to be an effective teacher, or to even be a convincing teacher. And maybe those two things are like the kind of things that are battling there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're teaching something that you're interested in, but you feel like you're lacking knowledge, this is where you bring in other experts, you bring in other
Yeah.
facilitators to kind of help out. It's okay to teach something that you're not necessarily a master in, but again, you do want to have some general insights. If you feel like you're teaching something that you have less experience with, but you think is still important to teach, okay, just make it really clear. Make it clear. You can tell that to your participants. Make it obvious that, like, hey guys, I am not a master in this. This is something that I have found, something I'm still learning. Let's learn more about it together, or something like that. I think if you make
Yeah.
the approach clear from the beginning, um, there should be no surprises. Let's talk about some general things too. If you've never taught before, one thing that I highly recommend, and it depends, if you're doing, like, for instance, if you're doing like a writing workshop, You may need some exercises where there's going to be like some generative sessions. In general, though, I recommend having enough change of activities. You want to change activities, I would really recommend between every 6 to 10 minutes. Yeah. Which means that you have an hour-long workshop. You want to, I would personally plan for 6 activities. Honestly, no, I wouldn't plan for 6. I would probably plan 10 activities so that way I have some backups. Always over plan, because some activities, what's going to happen, some activities are going to go longer than you thought, and some activities are going to go shorter than you thought. Okay, it's going to happen. So be prepared for that. Have too many things to do than you can fit in the time. Okay, even better would be having resources for those activities, so that way if there's something happen, like if you don't have time to go through everything, you can still hand some of those materials to the participants to say, hey, here are
Yeah.
some additional materials. It's a bonus. Don't tell them that you just didn't have time for it. Tell them that, hey guys, I have some bonus materials in case you're interested in diving deeper. Like each activity have a different like engagement level. What I mean by that, I'm taking a lot of this from like TESOL, ESL teaching, but a lot of ESL is really just, honestly, it's not really ESL teaching. It's just good teaching. If you have one activity where everyone's kind of just on their own writing something on a notebook, okay, so that's my first activity. My next activity, what I might do is I'm going to make you stand up, walk, find a partner, and share with a partner. For the next activity, what I might do is I might have like pieces of butcher paper around the room. I'm going to have different groups go to different pieces, so you're moving around the room. Okay. For the next activity, you might be in groups of 3. For the next activity, I might have you try to create like a dance or something like that. Like we're constantly, every single activity we're doing is engaging a different element. It's engaging a different component of your brain. It's forcing you to do something different. Constantly be switching up to engage people, because if you keep giving people the same sort of interaction and the same activity over and over again, you're going to kill the energy level of your workshop, and people are not going to take away from it as much as they could. You don't want people to disengage. If we're doing this course on short film. Okay. Let me pull that up. Okay, so we're making our course again. We're imagining we're making a poetry course on short film. Okay, but apply this to whatever workshop you're thinking of doing. What is a way that we could introduce people or get people to know each other, but we could also tie it into short film, so that way everything's feeling a lot more cohesive. Even just giving people a chance to describe a film project that they want to do, or maybe they read you a poem. They introduce themselves and they read you a poem, so that way you get an idea what their work is like, or something like that. Okay. Another strategy too, when you go to whole group, to kind of again build on that relationship, instead of having people introduce themselves, have them introduce someone else, so that way
Hmm.
it also takes away sometimes the pressure, because sometimes people don't know how to introduce themselves, don't know what to say about themselves. But instead it's like, oh well, I just talked to this one person, this is their name. It kind of cements them in their head, so at least they know one person in the workshop, and talking about them. So that's just another strategy. There's if you're interested in teaching and things like that, there's all kinds of techniques and things to be mindful of. A common technique is called think, pair, share, which is when you give a question, you give people a moment to think for themselves. Then you pair them up, so that way they can discuss their thought processes with a partner in a safer setting, because for some people it can be intimidating to talk in front of a whole group. And only then do you move to the whole group. Once people have had a chance to be on their own, then they work with a partner, then they move to the whole group. That helps people feel more comfortable in a larger setting. And similar idea, when people are sharing in a whole group, maybe you don't want to share your own thought. A question you can ask is, instead of asking people, oh, what do you think about this? You can instead ask, oh, what's something that you discussed with your partner? Or what's a discussion that came up in
Yeah.
your group? So that it takes some of the pressure off of people. You want to reach out to your venue. Okay. So maybe earlier you contacted the venue to get an idea what the cost is going to be. Now you reach out again and be like, all right, let's book a date. Let's set everything. For promotional purposes, what I really recommend is I would say, hey, the further out you can book it, the better, because that gives you more time to promote.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say a minimum. Like if I have a new idea for an event I want to do, I'm probably at least the minimum I'm looking at is about 2 months before I actually run it. And then once that's done, it's you kind of just wait until the day. It's not actually that hard to run an event. Like bare bones, it's deciding what you want to do, getting an idea how many people are going to attend, talking to the venue, and getting your materials ready. That's
Yeah.
pretty much what it all kind of boils down to.